Hi, everyone. This is Glenda Dawson, and you're watching Glenda's Dragon's Den. I have my guest co-host, Haleigh Overseth, and
Hi,
we
everybody.
have hi, and we have the returning guest, Brian. How are you?
Good, good. Happy to be back.
We're happy to have you because your story is so special and s- so many intricate details that you could tell us that we ran out of time last week. So we decided to have you back and finish all the story of all your experiences and how Buddhism and E.T.s come together and everything that you have experienced along the way. Basically, how you got to where you are now. So, so
I love
Sure.
it, and I would love to. I think last time we kind of left off, maybe let's say somewhere in your 20s, maybe. Was that where we were at? I don't,
yeah.
I'm trying human linear timeline kind of stuff, right? Trying to figure where we are in the chronology of the film strip here. But
Mhm.
can you maybe talk to us a little bit about, because we kind of touched on it last time, that, again, there's kind of the two schools of Buddhism, like the one that openly accepts like extra dimensional or ET entities and the interaction of humans and like other, not human beings, and the school of Buddhism that like doesn't really adapt to that. And can you maybe talk about like what drew you to one side or the other, or, what experiences did you have that like sort of led you to where you were able to like decide what your truth was between them.
Yeah, okay, sure. Well, yeah, I began with Buddhism in 1991 when I was 31. And I was interested in, well, the very first class I took was on cosmology, like the God realm, the devas, the angelic beings, the higher realm. So that was an immediate um, interest of mine. So I just deepened my studies. I went to Thailand in 1992 to 96, and I was a Buddhist monk for a year. So I got immersed in the Theravada Buddhist tradition, and when it really goes into cosmology. Like the Buddha, he talked about the devas in many discourses. Like it's all through his teachings. Got 6,000 pages of the Buddha's discourses. But when I came back to Canada, I was introduced to the Insight Meditation Society because they're the sort of the largest organization in America and Canada that's quasi Theravada Buddhist, but they're the ones that focus more on just meditation, a bit of psychology. It's also kind of leftist in its thinking. So they're not so much into karma and rebirth and the other realms of existence.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's what I meant by the two schools of thought. Like there's traditional Buddhism and also in Theravada, Mahayana, or Tibetan Vajrayana, they all have a wider cosmological view. But I guess presenting to an American audience, the Insight Meditation Society was focusing more on the stress reduction, meditation, that kind of stuff. So they basically
Hmm.
just avoid the cosmology. They even call it the classical teachings of the Buddha when they talk about the devas or the aliens, the higher realms. They call it the classical teachings of the Buddha as though we know better now. We're more scientific, more modern. So I was always interested in, well, what did the Buddha teach? So I read through all 6,000 pages of the Buddha's discourse called the Suttas, and you see the Buddha's goes into cosmology a lot. And it's very much the thinking of India of the day. Like the Buddha lived in 5th century BC, and the Brahmanical culture he came from, the Hindu culture, they also had a very vast cosmology with various beings that would pop in and out. So it's a part of Indian culture and Buddhist culture that we understand that there are devas or the higher realms, and they have the ability to pop in and out. And that's true of some UFOs. People witness UFOs just popping in, like not zipping
Mhm.
away, just popping in and popping out, like they're coming from another dimension. So this is not surprising in Buddhist countries or Buddhist thinking to regard, well, this must be the devas that the Buddha described. No, the term DEVA just means like a heavenly being or anything above human, which could be angelic or physical, like extraterrestrial.
Right.
That so that is something that I think is an interesting, I mean, direction to go in. And I know Glenda, does channeling and things too, but sort of in our conversations that we're now able to have a little bit more openly, thank you to the History Channel and Ancient Aliens for like, being kind of funny about it, but getting the conversation started. right? But I think people don't sort of put ETs and angel or fairy realms sort of together. Oh, and here's our fur friend. I'm so happy that our fur friend Happy is back. Oh my gosh, so cute. But like people don't necessarily always, you know, credit the idea that Christianity and the idea of angels is very parallel and tied to the idea of extra dimensional beings and physical ETs from other planets. And so, can you maybe talk a little bit about that and maybe some of your experiences that kind of helped you to maybe open the door to, you know, besides just the Buddhist teachings, did you have any experiences personally that, you know, gave you some insights into those parallels or into how those realms might interact?
Oh, yeah, you're right about Christianity. Like they have the idea of angels and heaven and also demons, like good and bad, higher realms. With that Buddhist cosmology, we have the Maras or Mara and the jealous gods as well. Yeah, and in terms of my own experience, I've done some channeling practices. In 1994, I was initiated into Buddhist kind of channeling practice. It's more to get some connection with the devas, the heavenly beings. So I guess it's different for different channelers, but I've had that experience of downloads, and certainly Glenda's done channeling. She knows that experience. Mm-hmm. So I guess, and my book actually described it as kind of a perforated circle is your mind, and the deva is like a larger perforated circle, and it kind of comes over you. So in a sense of channeling experience, you're kind of commingling minds or commingling consciousness with some higher realm being, and then that's where you get like a flood of thoughts or insights or imagery. That's kind of the channeling experience. So that's what I was taught. So I've done that, although the Buddha, he didn't actually recommend channeling. Like some Buddhist schools do it anyways. I think it probably comes from Hinduism, but Buddha was concerned it could lead to mental derangement in the channeler. So I just do it sometimes, but for me, that's kind of the experience of contact I've had, although I haven't never actually seen a physical alien. I've seen a UFO at least once, so pretty close, but I've never had any real kind of contact, I would say. I've just studied it a lot.
Well, I have been very blessed that I have had physical contact. So
wow.
Yeah. And it was right after I did some channeling, because I was in that right level of frequency, of energetic frequency, to be able to then really see them. And that's, I think, one of the key things for me anyway. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, I agree with frequency. Yeah, that's largely a big part of it, frequency.
Right. So tell us more, like Haleigh had said, from the 20s or so up.
Well, I guess, I was 31 when I discovered Buddhism. I guess that's when I got more focused on a spiritual path, more of a full-time endeavor. By 1992, I quit my job. I was selling mutual funds for 8 years. Then I moved to Buddhist Center, first in Vermont, and then to Thailand. Became more of a full-time sort of spiritual path. And then I was teaching it for over 20 years when I returned to Vancouver. I've actually published 3 books. The recent one I just published, this one, Theravada Buddhist Exploration of Meditation, Karma, Rebirth. My publisher's in India. They just recently published this, but I just want to show you, I have a visual illustration on page 123. This shows the levels of heaven. There's these are the realms of existence. There's the God realm, human realm, jealous God realm, the hell realm, animal realm, and ghost realm. So these are like the 5 realms of existence. And this page here is a blow up of the God realm, the heavenly realm. So, but it describes the center sphere with 6 lower heavens, and then the fine material sphere of these Brahmas, these vast beings, and then the formless sphere. So the Buddha is very detailed with 31 planes of existence. So I go into that in the book, a bit of the cosmology. So that's right from the Buddha. Yeah. So in terms of my experiences, I guess it was more in the 1990s, my 30s, that I got into channeling in the formal sense, although it did occur to me since I was a teenager, since I was 17, and several times in my 20s. But I didn't understand what it was. It was this deep, personal, magical kind of mystery. Like it was my greatest moments, these heightened states. And I'm sure people who naturally channel probably go through that confusion, like, what is this? Yes. But Buddhism sort of explained what it was in terms of the bigger picture.
And it kind of gives you an idea that your world isn't as little as you think it is, because all of a sudden
Yeah.
all these things open up, and you're even seeing the drop on those flowers in a different way, the raindrops and everything. So
Yeah, vast mind had that idea of a vast mind,
mhm,
unspeakable power, unspeakable vastness, that sense of that.
right.
Yeah, you probably know what that's like.
Yes. So you started teaching, you came back to Canada, you taught. How did that go? I mean, did you find that people were really open to the idea, or did you find that people were coming but kind of hesitant?
I found it went quite good. Maybe it's because I'm on the west coast of Canada. Vancouver is a bit more new age, a bit more open, you could
Right.
say, than the center of the country
Hmm.
or Ontario. So when I was first hired at the Vancouver School Board to teach night school courses on Buddhism, I think this might have been the first time we've ever had this in Canada, like adult-ed courses on Buddhism, because the woman, Connie, who hired me, she said, name was Connie Gibbs. She said, well, people can find Christianity by going to churches, but there's not many Buddhist institutions they can go to. So she thought it kind of justified doing it in night school courses. So
Yes.
the interest was there. And she said, after a few years, it just keeps going on and on and on. Like I taught 20 years in night school, 17 years at the Vancouver School Board. Some courses just go for a few years and fizzle out. But
Hmm.
the interest was there. In my first book, Freeing the Buddha, I've got a one chapter on channeling. So this is kind of like a course book. And chapter 9
Right.
was how to invoke Davis. So I would invoke, spend at least 2 classes on that, or sometimes a whole day course or a weekend retreat on the actual channeling type teachings. And some people in the class had remarkable kind of experiences. Like they would
Mm.
really connect with it in class. Like some people more gifted than others at that. So it was quite a dynamic time. Like I must have had about 15,000 people in my classes over a 20-year period. So most of my
That's a
closest
lot of
personal
people.
friends. Hmm? Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's a lot of people to be working with and kind of, experiencing the different things that people can experience when they go into those meditative states or start practicing those things and learning about what other people kind of, and that's maybe you can maybe talk a little bit about that. There's a certain sort of perception, I think, sometimes that kind of like you're saying, some people are more maybe like adept than others, or maybe just like receive messages more than others. But maybe if you can talk about the value in all of the different experiences, like whether you get the information and can do like a vocal channeling kind of thing, or receive images or receive messages, or maybe the things you get are more sort of sensory and intuitive than like things that you can describe in human terms, right? But it's all valid. It's all different ways of communicating. It's all different experiences with those other frequencies and those other realms, right? So, can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the evolution of like your understanding of interacting with these realms, and maybe sort of for those people who think like, oh, I don't have that ability, I couldn't do that thing, even though I'd really like to, maybe talk a little bit about sort of the value of each of those different experiences as you've seen through the people that you have met and talked to.
Yeah, yeah. I think part of it is listening to that still small voice within. Like people think they can't channel or they can't connect with the higher realms. But if you, in meditation, you create a lot of silence around you and you can listen to that still small voice within, and things can come up. And I find there's a difference between catching and containing. Some people can catch these energies, but if they can't contain it, they get too unstable, or they can't channel it in a useful way, or they might go crazy. There's probably people in mental hospitals who are kind of channeling or catching these energies, or they might have multiple personalities and can't control it. So I think from a practitioner or spiritual point of view, the real skill is containing these energies or getting some beneficial message or something you can use, or something that you can channel and that's going to benefit your life or benefit others. So yeah, I think that was my challenge. Developing this sort of channeling skill is really containing it. Rather than just catching it would seem to come beyond my control. It would kind of just come over me. But learning this practice of channeling, like I outline in the book, you can generate it and bring it on. Then it's a matter of how much you do it and what you get out of it, and not doing it too much. And I found some people in my classes had some remarkable experiences, and I would stay in touch with them later, and they would, continue to have this ability to channel or get messages, and they would find it. I guess what's meaningful about it is you have a real personal appreciation that higher realms exist, that there are these higher realms. If you actually feel some connection or channeling or connecting with higher beings, and it's real to you. It's not just something you take on belief, but it's an actual experience. That was really valuable to me to have that experience.
Yes, that's definitely is. Definitely is.
I love that. And I do, it's exciting to me just the idea, though, of how many people you worked with over the years. And it's something that makes me very hopeful about where humanity is. That people are so much more open to this kind of this conversation and this information, learning more about it, exploring it, trying to learn how to do it themselves. And, I think that's something that is maybe one of the more important things, like you're saying, that still small voice inside, figuring out how to hear and distinguish what is the voice that is me versus what is a voice that is just the things that I've been taught throughout my human experience, from society, from family, from friends, from just the experiences that I've had. And so, like, maybe you can talk a little bit about that in your experience and in your kind of like process with practicing Buddhism. What elements of Buddhism really helped you to find that voice within? Like, is it just the meditation? Was there something about the messages of Buddha or going through all those 6,000 pages? Like, what was it about the energy that resonated so deeply with you that you were able to utilize that to help yourself?
Yeah, I guess first I'll mention I was really influenced by a great Hindu teacher in the channeling teachings. I was warned by one of our senior teachers. His name's Dorji Lopan Lojo Dorji, about the misleading messages you could get in channeling. So he turned around the teachings of Sri Aurobindo, was a great Indian guru who lived around the middle of the 20th century, and he also taught in English and wrote in English. So he wrote very thorough, detailed kind of explanation of the different levels people go through. And I got about 10 pages of his teachings I copy right into my book on the channeling chapter. So he says, 9 times out of 10, you can be getting mendacious advice, like misleading advice from the Davis. So it's good to have a skilled teacher that can guide you through this. It's kind of like a minefield of the higher realms. You might be getting, misleading advice or taking you other directions, or you might have a realization that's not as great as you think. You might think you're a fully enlightened being, whereas you've only gone part of the way. So those are really good warnings. So that's part of my class and part of my book to warn people of the channeling experiences. But as for the Buddhist teachings themselves, I'd say they're more practically oriented. Like the Buddha said, he basically taught 2 things: the nature of suffering and the path to the end of suffering. So the Buddha's first noble truth is there is dukkha. It's often translated as suffering, but it means any kind of disappointment, any kind of dissatisfaction in life, or existential angst, even minor things. So even at the best of times, the Buddha describes there's this feeling of dukkha or anxiety. So the Buddha basically takes you from wherever you are. You start where you are. So instead of starting off with the high and lofty, the Buddha's first teaching is there is suffering. So people can agree with that. No one's going to argue with the fact that we have some difficulties or disappointments in life. So I think the Buddha's teachings is quite practical. Like there's 3 stages to it. First is morality, and then concentration, and then insight. So the Buddha begins with basic ethics, like don't kill, don't steal, don't engage in sexual misconduct, don't lie, don't take intoxicants. And then having established your virtue, then you settle your mind down more in meditation practice, like concentration, mental cultivation, try to root out your unwholesome mental states, cultivating more mental states. This whole process leading to insight or wisdom. So the Buddha was quite wise in how he could teach. So he described various magical powers that he had, but the Buddha said his greatest magical power was the ability to teach, to teach others in their language. So I think Buddhism is quite a practical kind of psychology. It's very much working on your own mind, developing yourself. It's not dependent on a higher power. There's no concept of a personal God in Buddhism. No one has power or control over you. So it's very much purifying your mind. Yeah, so that's what I really get out of the Buddhist teaching. It's quite wise. So the Buddhist discourses you can read again and again. Of course, it's good to have contemporary teachers who, in your own language. Like I follow a few monks. Like Ajahn Sona has been my main teacher since the year 2000. He lives in central British Columbia. He's got a YouTube channel, Ajahn Sona. Also, there's monks in Seattle that I follow a lot. So I think Buddhism is very much about, who are your teachers or what teachings that you follow. And there's various schools of thought. I'm with the Thai forest tradition. But we're the largest group in the world with, English-speaking Western Buddhist monks and nuns as well.
Very good.
That's
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Glenda. Oh no, I do really love that because it's I'm still in a space in my journey where there's a lot of navigating the what really does resonate with me, what doesn't, and I kind of like that you touched a little bit on that sort of the human experience having anxiety sort of built into it to a certain degree, right? And so maybe you can talk for those of us who are coming into 2025 and people have a lot of pressure on themselves for new year, new me, and we're going to do so great. And we kind of do that thing where we like create more anxiety in ourselves right? Can you talk to us a little bit about this? Maybe just a message for the audience, for those of us who kind of like it touches a chord to talk about that human anxiety and what are the things that we can do to kind of help ourselves allow that to be there, accept it, love it, and continue to move forward and ascend ourselves personally.
Yeah, that's true. Like all of us have anxiety, even when things go really well. They might not have gone well. So back in your mind, there's always anxiety. Well, I think 95% of our problems can be just dissolved. So anxiety is so much about our thoughts going in our mind or worrying about things that never happen. So anxiety is a mental state. So it's good to recognize it as a mental state, then use the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings to work with the anxiety. So it's not so much about changing the outside world. So there's meditation practice, not just in formal sitting meditation practice, but all throughout the day. You keep a vigil over your mind, you watch your mental states. For me, the practice, at least the Buddhist practice that I use the most is the metta meditation, or the term for loving kindness meditation, where you're developing thoughts of friendliness and goodwill, and it basically displaces aversion, not just anger, but even depression is a form of aversion. It's like not liking things the way they are. It's any kind of pushing away. So I find the loving kindness contemplation, it helps me the most. It cheers up my mind the most. So I do it every day, and throughout the day I reflect on it. There's an actual discourse of the Buddha on discourse of loving kindness, about 2 pages long, that I memorize. It's good to have some of those teachings memorized and you just repeat it to yourself. It's also like a guided visualization practice where you pick up imagery in your mind that create that feeling of friendliness, happiness. Like you can think of a favorite pet that you've had in your life, and imagine holding your pet or petting the pet, extending friendliness to it, and then think of the people that are closest to you, spreading it around. So it's kind of a creative, visual, emotional feeling, because it's really about your emotional life. All of Buddhism, it really is about your emotional state, because your life really is your emotional world. It's not just an intellectual type process. It's about how you feel. So yeah, suffering or the lack of suffering is really about how you feel. So yeah, but the Buddha gives many techniques. That's the one I practice most. Also, breath meditation is good just with dealing with anxiety, because it's also the practice the Buddha did the most and praised the most and taught the most, where you're basically just following the breath going in and out at the tip of the nose, and your mind naturally wanders and you let the thoughts go, keep coming back to the breath. So this is a way to get out of your thoughts, get out of your anxiety, and just let them go. So Buddhist practice is different than Freudian psychology. Like in Freudian psychology, Freud might say, well, you have to analyze this problem. You have to analyze your childhood trauma or whatever. But in Buddhism, the Buddha's just saying you can just knock these thoughts out. If you have anxious thoughts or negative thoughts, you don't really have to explore them, because it's sort of an endless chain of thoughts that would just lead to more thoughts. So it's more of a process of just knocking them out and replacing an unwholesome thought with a more wholesome thought. So the breath meditation is good because it's not any particular thought. It's just an automatic, anatomic process. Your breath is just happening naturally, and you don't have to control the meditation. So by putting your attention on just a neutral object where you have to supply all the interest just by following the breath. Then you're really having an opportunity to work with your mind. You see how the mind jumps around, thoughts, memories, emotions, and you keep letting it go, coming back to the breath. So it develops some concentration, some discipline, some mental purification, just to be able to do that. And most people find it's very difficult, even for 2 minutes, to put your attention on the breath. They really see, when people meditate, they really see how kind of confused and jumbled the mind is. In fact, many people, when they begin meditation, they think their mind's getting worse, because for the first time they're actually looking at the nature mind. So Buddhism, you just begin where you are and you work with the mind that you have. That's why meditation is so central to the path. Other religions don't emphasize meditation so much. It might be more externalized, like have an external savior or God or prayer. But Buddhism is more working on your mind. So I think it's practical in that sense. I mean, I've tried different spiritual paths. I used to be a Christian, but I think Buddhism, it's the best path that I found,
Right. Well, when the Tao brothers and sisters come here to the center and we do meditation, they have taught me to focus on one thing, whether it's breathing or say a candle in front of you, and just let everything else disappear. Thoughts, everything, and just focusing, and it has helped me tremendously. Especially after I received the gifts, the 3 treasures that they supply in one of their ceremonies, and after that, it just seems like my mind cooperates with me totally after that, and that's how I deal with stress. Because forget it. I could see where you're going with that and why you do that, because these days, so, but
Well, I do appreciate that, and the idea of focusing on your emotional experience as a human, because it's true, right? Everything that we do because we're looking for, it's the pleasure principle, right? Like, you're looking to feel better, and so we do get very caught up in the mind, and it's true. Like, even for me, like, it's being able to sit and quiet your mind or calm your mind, especially in the noisy world that we live in, is something that can really feel like a chore to a lot of people. So the idea of trying to focus on your breath and like stop your mind from racing off, right? It's like sometimes it's fighting a losing battle a little bit, but if you can, it is, right? If you can find a way to get into an emotion that feels better. And so are there certain like little trigger phrases or things that you use personally that come from Buddhism that, like, when you have some, that you would maybe give to someone who's like struggling with that and looking for like the easy sort of, here's a way that I can like help myself calm down and get into a better space and start cultivating a more wholesome mindset and thought process?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just watching over my thoughts throughout the day. Like, if thoughts get glum or negative, you realize they seem to be coming from nowhere. Thoughts can be created by the 5 senses or previous thoughts, but thoughts just can go off into the past. So you don't really have to analyze it so much, but it's more just catching myself the other day when I realized, well, I'm spacing out or I'm getting glum or getting a negative sort of state of mind, then just shifting the mind. So shift it to something more positive, or just to let it go or shake it off. So that's constantly keeping vigil of the mind. That's why I come back to these phrases of like the loving kindness, the metta meditation, the friendliness. My cat helps a lot. I sort of direct it to my cat or
it's good to have our fur babes and our pets. I agree with that. I'm a dog person personally, but she's over here she's right over here so that I can reach her and pet her ears.
Well, I'm a dog person too. Building I live in, they don't allow dogs. They allow us 1 cat. So I didn't tell him it's good for him. He's sleeping, yeah.
See, I have one exactly like that, but it's a female. And
you gotta have those fur babes so that you can have a little bit. It's the best therapy there is, to sit with your animal friends.
Therapy, yeah.
And maybe is there anything in Buddhism, because you talked about like devas and things like that, and this is something that's sort of come up for me recently, the idea of pets and animals having obviously they have a soul as much as we do, right? But that their souls are also multidimensionally incarnated as other beings that are maybe your friends or your, I don't know, your team, your A team, as it were, right? Like, is there anything in the Buddhist teachings when it, like, because you talked about the animal realm, right? In that circle that you showed us. Can you talk a little bit more about that and sort of, again, the interactions of those realms and I don't know, not just the benefit in that human sense of like, oh yeah, you're cuddly, I love you, but the being able to like really connect with the soul of your pet, the soul of your animal, and recognizing that soul as an individuated soul as much as you are.
Yeah, like animals have souls just like people. I know I think in the early centuries of Christianity, they had to vote to decide whether or not animals had a soul or not. And one conference even voted whether or not women have a soul. And I think women win by 2 votes. But
Wow, the whole 2 votes we made it by, Glenda. That was me and you. Our 2 votes was the one that popped it over. All right, awesome.
yeah, I think it was around 6th century AD they had that vote. But
Oh,
Buddhist
ladies,
view,
we've been.
yeah, we have, well, karma and rebirth are the really only 2 central doctrines of Buddhism that you'd have to have some conviction about really to be a Buddhist. So from a Buddhist view, you have your consciousness, and upon death, you can take rebirth in any of these 5 realms. So like a cat could take rebirth as a human being, or a human being could go down to the animal realm. So it's all very, very fluid. It's also kind of states of mind as well. But from Buddhist view, the human realm is quite fortunate because you have the ability to hear the Dharma, like the spiritual teachings, and follow a spiritual path. So you can make a lot of progress in one human life. But to take rebirth in the animal realm is considered unfortunate because it's characterized by a lot of habitual patterns. Like the Buddha compared the animal realm or the human realm to a lush forest. There's some pleasure, some pain, but the animal realm is compared more to like a swamp. It's a bit more difficult. So if you take rebirth as an animal, as a tendency to just stay in the animal realm, it's hard to earn enough merit or good karma to get out of the animal realm. So that's why it's good to maintain your virtue, stay in the human realm. But as far as pets, I think for cats or dogs, they're earning a lot of good karma, I think, because they please us, they please human beings. And also my cat doesn't go out, so he's not killing mice. In fact, just yesterday I had a mouse here, and Happy caught the mouse, but he didn't actually kill. He just held it. And then I managed to get the mouse in a container and get the mouse outside.
Yeah.
So the mouse is unharmed. He
Like,
survived.
hey, we gotta get this guy out of here. I know you don't want to see me kill it though. Like that is the happiest cat there is. And now you just have a Disney character that you have to pitch to like the Disney Channel. I have a cat that will catch mice and help me get them outside, like how people catch spiders and put them outside.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a Buddhist cat right there that you have.
So he's not killing anything, so he doesn't kill anything. So I think he's got good karma cheering me up and my friends, so so he'll probably have a good rebirth, whereas a natural cat would naturally be killing, although it's just natural for a cat to kill. But yeah, that's why the Buddha described higher and lower realms. Like an animal realm is considered lower than the human realm. Then there's actually the ghost realm, which is kind of in between. There's some higher ghosts and lower ghosts. Then there's actually a hell realm. Many people are disappointed in Buddhism. We do have a hell, but with the logic of karma, people have got really good karma can become Deva realm, go to heavenly realm, and people got very serious negative karma can go to a lower realm, a hell realm. So an animal realm is not so bad. It's the only other realm you can see with the naked eye. Like most people can't see the ghost realm or the angelic beings or the hell beings. But it's good to be a human being.
It is good to be a human being. It's an interesting kind of concept, though. Again, you're saying, some people are disappointed Buddhists have a hell. I kind of, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the show Lucifer, but like I kind of go to like the example of that show where, Lucifer overlooking hell doesn't create bad things. It's not a place where something is like you're put there and tortured after being bad. It's you place yourself there. You've chosen to be there, and the hell that you are experiencing is what you believe you need to be punished for. So even your experience of that sort of hellscape is one that you've created. So it comes back again to like the mindset in your mind. like as a human being, you can put yourself into the hell realm just by having those thoughts that are like negative loops that keep you in a space of that anxiety energy, that depression energy, all those awful things,
Mhm.
right? It is where you place yourself, right? Because everything is here and now. So you as a being like are experiencing your human self, but you could be a consciousness in any of those other realms at any point if you, and maybe you can talk to me about that a little bit, because this is a question, and Glenda, talk to me about this too. This is a question that comes up for me, like, what proximity am I to this or that other parallel existence of mine that allows me to channel these beings that I am connected to? Or what proximity am I to the ghost realm where I am a ghost from, the Victorian era or whatever? Right? Like sometimes I ask myself that question, what is it that makes me so invested in this Haleigh character avatar as a human, that so much of my consciousness is here in this human experience, right? And it has to be because I chose it and I want to be here. So for those of us who are kind of like playing with those ideas and toying with that a bit of like, why this human, why here, and what's my proximity to these other realms or beings, and how do I determine that? Like, what's your kind of prerogative on that kind of concept?
Well, yeah, you're right about mental states. Like all the five realms are mental states. So a person, a human being, can go through a hell realm state of mind with lots of like anger and hatred. Like if someone's really filled with anger and hatred, they can be in a hell realm state of mind. Then an hour later, they could calm down and be the heavenly realm state of mind is kind of a bliss consciousness, higher bliss states, where the ghost realm state of mind is kind of a poverty mentality, like say a drug addict constantly looking for the next hit. And you see some people like that, it's kind of sometimes social agencies like to take some off the street, clean them up, give them a place to live, but then they're back under the stairs living outside because they want to be outside or addicted to something. So that kind of striving or hungry ghost, but even use that term, hungry ghost. So it's a state of mind. So a human being can go through all these five states of mind. The Buddha did teach that your actual last thought at death conditions the next realm into which you're born. That's why it's good to die in a calmer state of mind, because if you're in a really negative last thought, they could condition the whole next rebirth. But of course, your karma would follow you, good or bad, into the next life. But yeah, fundamentally, even before the condition of your body, whether you're a human or a ghost being or a deva, is your state of mind. So the state of mind can fluctuate or change. So fundamentally, it's the mental state that really defines, who you are. And there's a constant state of change as well. That's why Buddhism is kind of unique with the idea that we don't have a self, in the sense that there's no permanent abiding identity. Or identities, I always say, have changed and flux. Like when you're a 10-year-old, you're a different person than you are now. So there's always a state of change and flux. Everything about you is in a state of change. That's why what's meant by no self in Buddhism, that you don't have any core identity, that everything's unstable and changing. Yeah, so that's why I always really want to watch over your mental states and develop as much wholesome mental states as you can, and watch out for the negative mental states and keep vigil over them or try to minimize them. So it's kind of like a real psychology. Like we think of the Buddha as the greatest psychologist in history, in a way.
I love that. Like, Freud, watch out. Buddha already had you beat before you showed up. I love that.
That's one of the
Yeah.
reasons. One of the reasons why, even in hospitals, in the hospice section, they were allowing Reiki practitioners to go and give Reiki to those that are in hospice, because they wanted them to be in the best frame of mind and best energy level that they could be, even as they're transitioning, because they want
Yes.
them calm. They don't want them to be all afraid, because that could create the hell that you're going to.
This is something that's kind of an interesting topic then, if we can maybe sort of just follow this thread just a little bit. The idea of that sort of death transition that like humans a lot of time can be really very afraid of, right? And it is something that varies among cultures. I think in Western culture, and this is sort of something that I find interesting, the idea that, and there's a book that I read that kind of outlined this. In Western culture, we've become very separate of death and that transition process. You have funeral directors, you have other people who take care of your family members who are sick, you have other people who prepare the body when they pass, you have other people who deal with the burial, and it's very sort of clinical and separated, whereas in other cultures, the family is very intimately involved in like the end of life care of a loved one, in the processing of the body once they pass, and the burial and all of those processes. And in those cultures, tends to be less fear of death, right? Because you have that relationship with it where you experience that kind of transition and it doesn't become a fearful sort of thing. Can you maybe like, and I don't, again, this is, and I have some questions on the ghost realm too. So we're gonna like, I'll do my best, but start there. This is an interesting conversation to me. The idea that, you know, in Western culture, we kind of have become so afraid of death and become so afraid, therefore, of illness, and so attached to things like the pharmaceuticals and all the stuff that we complain so much about in the medical institution, because we have this fear of death, but we've separated ourselves from the experience of it in a way that becomes very fearful, and we don't give ourselves the opportunity to help someone transition and be in the best kind of space, especially those who are very close to us.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems in the West is the scientific materialism thinking. I think it really rose during the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s, people thinking, well, science will give us all the answers. So I guess there's also a globalist kind of promotion of the atheist idea, like say communism is an atheist philosophy that you don't have a soul, you're just a cog in the wheel, work as the world unite. So communist and scientific sort of reductionist materialist thinking, which is common in the West, is there's just the physical world, there's nothing left, and when you die, that's it. So that's a cause of fear for a lot of people. I know I got 2 brothers and 2 sisters. One of my brothers and one of my sisters are reductionist materialists. I think the body, that's it. When you die, you're annihilated. So that can create some anxiety. And I was trying to convince my sister, well, there is evidence, you know, like at the University of Virginia, Dr. Ian Stevenson conducted studies of over 3,000 little kids had memories of the previous life. So there's some scientific evidence for this. But I think that's caused a lot of the fear in the West. Like we're kind of a post-Christian society. Probably the majority of people, I know in Canada, the majority aren't Christian. So a lot of them don't have any particular, you know, conviction in life after death. So I think being a Buddhist, you know, you have a real conviction in karma and rebirth, and that you're responsible for your actions. So the type of rebirth you get does relate to the sort of moral virtue, the type of life that you live. But there's a real conviction in life after death. That's why, for me, there's no particular fear of death that way. Although I think of Woody Allen, he said, I don't mind dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens. So
I just don't want to be there when it happens. I love it. Well, and that's kind of the question that I wanted to roll into a little bit, though, with the ghost realm, and kind of talking about, like you were saying, being in a wholesome frame of mind kind of helps determine where you end up. And obviously in our culture, people are fascinated with the paranormal and the idea of people being ghosts after having died a horrendous death, you know, murders, accidental deaths, things that are traumatic, things that are difficult. And like, can you talk a little bit about like what the Buddhists have to say about that kind of situation where, you know, the end of your life is an unexpected one and a traumatic one, and so you inadvertently, or not of an intentful, you know, mindset, go into the ghost realm in that kind of way?
Yeah, actually, it's quite common to go into the ghost realm. The lower you go in the realms, the more populated it is. For instance, there's far more animals and insects in the world than there are human beings. So the ghost realm is probably more ghosts than there are human beings. I think from a Buddhist view, say your average human being with average ethics, they would eventually come back to human birth. But there's usually a lag. Like if someone were to die immediately, most people would float around the ghost realm maybe for about a year and a half. Then they'd be attracted to someone or follow them home, enter in a woman's womb, and take rebirth. And we've probably done this, you know, thousands of times in the past. It's very common for your average person to, because people have done past life regression hypnosis, many recall being human beings, just ordinary lives in the past. But there's this in-between state, because if you're to die right now, there's not likely an available womb this second for you to take rebirth in. So it's quite common to be born in the ghost realm. The Buddha described it as a highly varying realm. It goes almost up to the Deva realm, like very pleasant situation for a ghost. You're hanging out with other ghosts in a nice environment. Then there's a hungry ghost.
That's not so bad. That's yeah. Hanging out with
your chilling.
But yeah, okay, but then there's the hungry ghost. You said that before, and that's a term that I know I've heard before, but talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can go almost down to the hell realm, the ghost state, where a ghost is quite isolated, or some people have witnessed repeating ghosts, like ghosts from the Civil War, particular areas where people see the same ghosts moving around and around, or they see ghosts dressed from a colonial era. So there could be some people stuck for like hundreds of years in sort of a
Mhm.
mental loop in a ghost realm, like say a haunted house. So that can happen
Mhm.
as well. So that would be someone taking rebirth in the lower ghost realm, whereas an average person might just be floating around for a year and hanging out with even dead relatives or other ghosts in some type of society, and then taking rebirth in the human realm. So there are some people that can see this. I've met people who could see ghosts and see them floating around. Often they would see sort of like isolated ghosts or ghosts that don't seem that happy. They see them in the street or in an alleyway. Like I haven't actually seen a ghost myself. I might have felt them. Um, so the Buddha described it as a highly varying realm. And in Dr. Ian Stevenson's research, it's probably the best scientific evidence ever for previous lives. And his studies, it seems to be about a year and a half is average period from time a person dies till they take a human rebirth. So a lot of examples of these little kids, as soon as they can talk, they describe, where they lived in the same village, not far away, than their previous name, their family members, a lot of details like that. And they do recall this in between state where they're just floating around, hanging
Mhm.
around. And it goes
Yeah,
from
basically have to kind of go through their life, see what they need to work on for the next one. Do they want to come back for that lesson, for that growth, and do all the negotiations up there, and then come back. Although it's interesting that you say a year and a half. For me, it was all dependent. It's at least a year and a half, and it's all dependent on the actual soul, the spirit that decides when to come back, whether to wait for a soulmate to come back or start fresh with a whole new soulmate family, I guess it would be.
Mhm.
yeah, it can
So
vary a lot. Yeah.
right. So it's very interesting, very interesting. Uh,
I know there's in the New Age community, a lot of people talk about, you have these contracts. You make these contracts before you're going to be born. You're going to do this and that.
mm,
For Buddhism, for a person who's generally kind of unconscious or that not that spiritually developed, it's more unconscious than that. It's Buddha describes being blown on by the winds of karma, like you're confused, what's going on, you're a ghost, then you just get drawn towards someone, you enter their womb, become their baby. So it's not like making contracts. So the law of karma, you could think of it that way, like the law of karma follows us from life to life, so
right.
your karma will come back to you, good things will come back to you,
Mhm.
negative things come back to you, but it's not like a consciously worked out contract. So Buddhism doesn't agree with that kind of new age belief that we make these contracts. It's not that conscious. However, a more spiritually developed person might have some control over where they take rebirth, who they want to take
Mhm.
rebirth with. They might have more of a choice. So it depends on a person's kind of spiritual attainment, I guess.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the things that this it's different in what I have experienced. So it's good. I could see it both ways. I could
Yeah.
see it both ways. Uh, and now, out of all this that you have been taught and you teach and or taught before, or whatever, how has that helped you, say, to see UFOs or see galactics or feel them? If you don't exactly, because when I say see, I just mean experience them, because some people can actually see them physically, some can't, like you were saying before. So how does that your practice help you in that?
Yeah, well, I work with Aspen. We created University Galactus together, and she
Mm-hmm.
channels this entity, Betelgeuse. She gave me a particular rainbow meditation where you visualize connecting with the center of the earth and taking it upwards to the higher realms, and thinking of there's these vast kind of city-sized UFO motherships where there's some evidence that these exist. So I sort of do this bilocation practice where I visualize myself there in this space with with the E.T.s there, like the grays and the mantids. So I've been doing this regularly for a couple of years, this meditation. So that's kind of how I kind of connect with E.T.s, is kind of like a bilocation practice. This is similar to like in Tibetan Buddhism, like deity visualization practice, where it's actually a contact modality. When you're visualizing, say, a particular higher realm deity, it's a way to kind of invoke that presence or consciousness. So it's not just something you're making up, but it's actual type of modality to make contact. Yeah. So for me, that's how I get sort of emotionally and mentally close to the E.T.s with this visualization meditation practice, which I do just about every day. Yeah.
And it's a very good meditation, by the way.
Yeah. It's uplifting.
Right. Yeah, I know Beetlejuice, and I know. So
I was going to say Beetlejuice. Who doesn't love Beetlejuice? I love that.
Yeah, it's a little bit different Beetlejuice.
Yeah. She pronounces Beetlejuice to distinguish it from the movie.
Right. So
yeah, on our website, University of Galactus, we've got 3 launch videos where I host Beetlejuice channeling through Aspen. She's quite profound too. Like you can tell, it's a real channeled message. So I've got a lot of respect for this entity. Most of the ideas of University of Galactus come from Beetlejuice.
Yeah, no, definitely. She's very good at that. Very good. We used to channel 2 sessions together, and we used to channel together. She's amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
Yeah. So tell us, where do you see yourself going from here?
Well, I guess right now my main focus, my University of Galactus work is like the dean of this organization, mainly making videos. We just did one this morning. We did like a panel with 4 other experiencers. So yeah, I make videos all the time. I work like 50, 60 hours a week, raising awareness about the ET agenda for human advancement and try to dial down fear of extraterrestrials. So just part of the whole movement to raise awareness that of the extraterrestrial presence, and that it's a positive thing for the world, because a lot of people have negative thoughts about extraterrestrials, or their society is giving a lot of negative movies about it. So I try to like interview people who are experiencers, or people who've just done a lot of research in the field, and promote that. So I think it was like a lifelong work. I'm quite interested in doing this. Like I was teaching Buddhism for 20 years, and I gradually morphed into the whole UFO ET things around 2006 when I got interested in this. It's almost like I was living a double life. So I'm more interested in the ET agenda than just teaching formal Buddhism. I said to my teacher, other people can teach Buddhism. There's lots of other Buddhist teachers out there. Other people can teach meditation. But I think the ET presence in the world is the biggest issue in the world, the highest issue in the world. It's also something positive, because it's easy just to get negative about the world, all the political problems, all the wars, what's wrong with the world, but it doesn't really help to just keep emphasizing what's wrong with the world. So I think the ET agenda is giving something positive, and that we should raise our awareness and raise awareness about this and spread that to the people. So it's a positive message. That's really my commitment, to emphasize what's good about the world. And I think also the 3 waves of souls described by Susie Hansen, I'd like to give her credit, because she really describes in her book, The Dual Soul Connection, at the end, the real process by which ETs are taking rebirth as human beings. And we see this sometimes now in what's called the star children. There's also others which she describes as the concealed ones, who are assuming leadership positions within society, and a good way to sort of turn the tables on the corruption that exists in the world. So I think this process is underway. The way the ETs are influencing the world, society, and politics, is more of these higher realm beings are taking rebirth within human society to bring about a change. So that's something people don't really think about much, and even in the UFO community, not many people think about that too much. So I'd like to focus on that and raise awareness about that process. So I think that's really what's been going on probably since the 1800s. This process has been gradually underway, because I think the ETs have a lot of time, they think, in terms of centuries, when they bring changes to the world. Our lifespans are short. So
yeah, we think we're running out of time all the time because we have shorter human lifespans, right? So like they have a little bit more patience with things that are going on than we can tend to, because like, hey guys, we got a shorter lifespan. We don't have as much time to watch all these things as you do, and we want to get to the good stuff.
Yeah. Like just today, I've been watching a video. President Trump's son, Don Jr., is doing a video just today with Ross Coulthard, who's investigated a lot about, downed UFO crash and bodies. And it's interesting. President Trump's son is really have an interest in this. But these people are always pushing for disclosure. We want disclosure now. But the ETs have a lot of time, and I think they think of this as gradual process. Like since 1947, I think they're gradually giving us disclosure, but things have been ramping up, I guess, since 2017. They're disclosing more, talking about it more. So this is an exciting time, I think, for learning about the ET presence in the world.
Well, I think what they want to do is kind of introduce the subject and get going. So when they do show up in their natural state in front of us, we don't all go hiding and, screaming.
Right. We don't have the nervous system freak out that we're used to, again, with the anxiety. Get in your Buddhist, wholesome field, guys, and get your nervous system chilled out so that the ETs can come and hang out with us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's I think one of the things that they're waiting for is the human body to catch up.
Yeah, and there's 8 billion people. So the quandary for me is, how do you spiritually develop 8 billion people? Like in the UFO community, we're kind of an echo chamber. So we're ready for, but there's millions of people that don't even think about space.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
How do you bring everybody on board when everybody's kind of caught up in the anxiety and the survival mode, right? That's where the healing comes in, and that's where it's so important for those of us who, are interested in these things to put these conversations out there so people can have a space to go to it and start that personal journey of, okay, what do I have to do to help all of us get to a space where we're more ready for a little bit more interaction and a more positive outcome and a more positive relationship. And
so it's good what the two of you are doing, making these videos, keeping the conversation in the public, and keep talking about this. We're all like foot soldiers. We're all the boots on the ground doing what we can for the bigger picture. And I think it's up to little people like us to extend the conversation and keep talking about it publicly, So it's great what you're doing.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And we're so grateful that you come and talk to us too and share and help us to continue the conversation. That's why it's important for us to have guests like you come on.
Yeah. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, Haleigh. Thank you to our audience. And Brian, as always, I'll catch you later in a different place.
Yeah, you're inspiring to talk to. I really like the flow. The three of us really clicked well. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
I love it. Thank you for being here.
All right, guys. Welcome. As always, find us, look for us, share. You know where Brian can be found because it's all in the description. So, as always, have a great week. See you next week. Love you,
everybody.
Bye.
Love you, everybody. Thank you so much for